I'm Jane and I'm 60 years of age, and I look forward to every day seeing the sun rise.
My name is Diane. I'm 69. My goal is to see my grandson grow up.
I'm Sue, I'm 49, and I want to see my daughter get to her 21st and then be happily married with children. I want to be a rice power grandma, yes. That's my recovery goal.
I really didn't get a diagnosis because it was all an emergency in the end. I'd been going to my local GP for 4 or 5 months, complaining of pains, tiredness, you know. So one day I just couldn't cope any longer. I had numerous tests during those 4 or 5 months. So we went to emergency, and that's where the doctor just said, "Oh, you've got ovarian cancer." And I said, "Oh, right." And I didn't really know anything about ovarian cancer. I know about a lot of other cancers, but like a lot of the population, I knew very little, which was probably good in a way.
Back at just on Christmas 2010, I was starting to feel just a slight unwellness. I was fit, well. I had had a history of endometriosis and I had some pelvic pain, and I thought this didn't seem right. I was admitted to hospital. I was operated on. The cyst was removed. Again, still no identifying factors. The day after I got home from hospital, I was just arrived home and the phone rang, and it was a specialist on the phone, and his voice in the background was, "Are you sitting down, Jane? I need to tell you some bad news. You've been diagnosed with ovarian cancer." At that time, my world stopped. It was really hard to comprehend the magnitude of being told a story like that, even though I have actually lost both of my parents to a cancer-related illness, and my mother when I was only 5. These weren't related, and I never considered myself as a vibrant, healthy woman that this would be my story.
I had a phone call from my nurse to say that the CA125 blood test that I had showed that it was elevated, and I went for a pelvic scan that led to revealing abnormalities, and she put me straight into my gynaecologist, who then said, you need to go for a big operation. You're going to have a staging laparoscopy. And then I had the operation and discovered after that operation that I had, or during that operation, that I had stage 3 ovarian cancer. And it came as a great shock because up until then I was teaching at high school and I was happily surrounded by adolescent teenagers and had no idea that the little bits of pain that I had been experiencing and the nights where I couldn't sleep properly, or, all the signs and symptoms that I now are ovarian cancer were actually indicating that that's what I had. And by the time it was discovered, I was stage 3. So, yeah.
So we started ringing and asking for people's recommendations of surgeons. And I've never done that before in my life. I've always relied on my GP. Here's one died, go for it. But this was just too crucial, too dire, too everything. Everyone ended up giving us a recommendation of about 3 people, and one person's name kept cropping up. And I've never interviewed a doctor in my life before, and this doctor came across town, and I interviewed him with the family, and then we said, yes, we trust him, we like him, he's got a fabulous reputation, and we went with him. And from then on, he took over, and it was probably the best decision of my life.
Myself, I'd never really had any understanding of what ovarian cancer was. I didn't know anyone who had ovarian cancer. I didn't actually know the full extent of what it meant. So I only had to wait a couple of days until I got my appointment with my next specialist. And at that time, I was able to take actually a room full of people with me. My husband, my sister came from interstate, my daughter and friends, they all came with me, and they were all welcomed into the consultation.
I needed answers. I needed to know, what did chemotherapy mean? What was going to happen to me through chemotherapy? Was I going to experience great pain or not? Where was the insertion of the injections going to go? What was going to happen to my work? What was going to happen to us financially? My daughter, who's going to look after my daughter? So I had an explosion of questions and decisions to make whilst I'm in hospital, that I relayed off my husband first, as in my first support, and then went on to dissect and work through with this support team that the lady had.
I immediately was able to create a relationship with my specialist, in that I saw him as my champion. He had knowledge, he had a way of explaining that, and that I had a belief in him. And he explained, because that it was a grade 3 type of ovarian cancer, that after the surgery that I would need chemotherapy.
I had 7 days. So that's when the family and I swung into action about interviewing people, deciding what to do. And I couldn't have the chemo because of the blockage in the intestines, and it was just better to operate. So that was the decision we came to with the surgeons. The hospital I ended up was reasonably close to home, and I think if you can do that, it's probably good, because friends and family, you're not there for 5 minutes, you're there for quite a while. So not that that was a major consideration, but it turned out to be, with me being there so long, it was beaut that it was closer for the family.
Ovarian Cancer Australia, I was in contact with them. They were actually able to assist in information provision, just talking, having a chat on the phone. I did actually have a look at the Cancer Council of Victoria, their website. I did actually receive some information packs in the mail, which helped. I was able to read through them, because I actually found that the diagnosis of ovarian cancer was very complex. It's actually just not one cancer. That's how it is described, but it is actually many different types. So to understand what type I had and what that future meant was important for me to comprehend.
Finances were greatly affected because I worked. So I had a daughter. I wasn't full-time. I was 3 days a week. And so that extra money was suddenly cut off. So we had some financial decisions to make, and that's where my husband really came into the picture. So he went through all my, the little print, the little writing that's at the bottom of my superannuation, and he organised early superannuation that we could access it. And we also approached Centrelink to get carers allowance, and also the council to get a disability sticker on the front of the car, so I could get close to the hospital and places.
Once I'd received my diagnosis, I actually contacted my workplace and just advised of my diagnosis and that I would need some significant time off just until I got through my next surgery. Once that I was actually I'd actually moved past that recovery stage. After my surgery, my second surgery, I actually did go back to work for a few days, and then I was due to commence my chemotherapy. So I negotiated with my manager that I would need time off during that week, and that I would probably be able to return the 2 weeks after my treatment, but on a part-time basis.
So I kept a journal, my own journal. I wrote down every day my feelings, my thoughts, and recorded what was going on around me. And then that would inspire questions, and then I was able to bounce them off my support team.
My choice with where I sought my treatment was actually determined by who my specialist was, and because he is a lead in one of our Melbourne's leading women's hospital, that was obviously where I was going to have my surgery and my treatment. I do have private health insurance, and I actually use that within the hospital because I do know that my treatment, both in seeing my specialist, my surgery and my chemotherapy, there was no difference between myself and the public patient, it was really good to know.
I was diagnosed in the September, and then I got out of hospital end of October and started chemo. We decided that I needed a communications book, and my family, who had a million questions because they knew as little about ovarian cancer as I did, and we were all madly reading. Well, they were reading. I couldn't concentrate to read. The communications book was just great because they would write down questions that they wanted to ask the doctors, or the doctors would tell me something, so they'd write it in the communications book. And part of the chemo treatment makes your memory addled. So I still carry in my handbag a little notebook, and I just write down and jot down things. And whenever I go to doctors, I always have questions written down and then maybe just add it, because there's just too much to take on. You know, it's like absorbing an encyclopedia, and remembering the answers, remembering everything is just, you're under enormous stress. So yeah, my communication book was wonderful.
Following 6 weeks after my surgery, my chemotherapy commenced, and I was having a course of carboplatin and paclitaxel for a period of 6 months. And initially, I suppose it's really hard to comprehend what one might feel like when you're having the chemotherapy injected into your veins, especially when you see the nurses when they gown up, goggles, gloves, but this is actually going into your blood vein. It's actually quite significant to get your head around.
With my specific cancer, I was given 6 months of chemotherapy, which involved carbon platinum and paclitaxel. The lady who heads up that support team, she sat with me for my whole first chemotherapy treatment. So I had her and I had my husband with me. It's daunting, it's scary. It's like, what the heck is going to happen? Am I going to feel pain? And, you know, what's it going to do to me, this chemotherapy treatment? And they give you the possible side effects, warnings of what could happen. And they sat with me the whole time. So I felt so confident. I didn't feel left out or left alone or anything. I actually got through the first 6 months of chemotherapy quite well. Yes, I did feel a bit tired. I did, find it difficult to taste, and I had issues with taste, so my eating patterns had to change, and I was walking. I kept walking. Every single day I was walking. I was on a mission to walk and keep my vessels in my body, under the best function that they could be for what was coming.
Because I was having weekly chemo, my husband would take me over, and there was a bit of a process before I could start the treatment. And then I got a roster going of friends. So they would pick me up in the early afternoon and take me for coffee and cake. And sometimes all I wanted to do was go to sleep, and I was exhausted, but I thought, nope, this is my little bit of being normal and touching base with people, and that was wonderful.
And I lost my hair quite quickly, within a month. So I worked through that issue quite quickly with my husband and my daughter. It was like a bit of a fun journey. I went to the shop and got some bandanas. I got a wig at one point and tried that, and I just started exploring different elements of how I could present myself.
One thing that really did help me, a friend actually gave me a recording of some meditation. I previously had done things like yoga and that, but never really got into the meditation side. And whilst I was at my wit's end and really either in pain or I just couldn't sleep, I would actually put on the meditation, and that was really soothing and helped actually my mind focus on that as opposed to whether it be my stress or my pain.
You know, it's amazing. I think I have known my husband for 26 years. We've been married for 12 years. So for us, it was just another challenge, just another dice to roll and move through the consequences of it. Our relationship's very strong. We have a very strong foundation. His commitment to me took on a new level. Yes, things did have to change a bit with the whole intimacy issues, but it just moved the dynamic of our relationship into a new level and a new understanding. And we worked with that, and we've worked around that, and things are where they're meant to be for us, and we're quite happy with that.
No, you can't be the same person. Most people wonder about being hit by a bus, but I've been hit by a bus, so I know what it's like. It changes you, just in lots of ways. I get less anxious about things. I think, oh, that's so minor. You know, I used to get het up in a committee or something. Oh, who cares?
So now that I have cancer, and it has reoccurred for me 3 times, I've come to understand that it's not to anyone's help to curl up and give up. For me, I have become proactive. I have felt that the need to move outward is far more of a survival plan for me than to move inward and internalise and dwell on it to a point where I give up. I have new mantra in my life, which is to that faith, hope and love, to move forward, to never give up. I believe that all things can work together for good. So the cancer has in itself given me opportunity to spend a lot more quality time with my family. Instead of taking things for granted that I used to, I am grateful for every day that I'm alive.
Well, there's quite a few resources. So Ovarian Cancer and Cancer Australia have a number of online newsletters, podcasts and various things that you can sign up for. So I did quite a few of those and still do, and I find it quite interesting to hear what's happening and research and all of that type of thing. And I certainly went along to BRECAN. They have support sessions for people, and I found that was really good, just talking to other people who'd been through the experience with you.
The change at the beginning it had an enormous impact because I didn't know what the future was, and that can be really frightening. But I've always been a person that takes one day at a time. Each night when we go to bed, we can't take back the day that has just been. But when we get up each day, we have a new day. And I think that we just need to embrace that and look for the positive aspects, because whilst having a diagnosis of ovarian cancer is actually, I suppose, negative, I did take the positives out each day, and I would look for them and I would find them, and then I would take them into my next day. And I've learnt so much. I have met so many inspirational people, being able to contribute. All of those are positive things, and I wouldn't have those without my ovarian cancer diagnosis.